hope you're feeling groovy as we're about to review another movie.
This is Faithful Film Fanatic, and today we have a wonderful guest on who's an actress, producer, and is best known for Sonic, Marlene Sharp.
Hi there. Hi, Terry. Thank you for having me and my furry companion on your show today.
No
Here
problem.
she is.
Thank you for coming.
Here's Blanche. She's my co-pilot and the chairwoman of the board for my company, Pink Poodle Productions.
What made you start Pink Poodle Productions?
Well, I call it forced entrepreneurship, and that is because I lost my job at the end of it was the end of 2019, and I was working for Level 5, which is a Japanese video game company that is known for Yokai Watch, the Layton series, LBX, a bunch of really well-known video games and the TV series and movies that go along with them. So I was working at Level 5's Los Angeles office, and the Japanese management decided that they wanted to shut down all Level 5 offices that were not in Tokyo. So that included our Los Angeles office, the Hong Kong office, and the Seoul, Korea office. And so that was the end of my job. And so the office closed, and I had started Pink Poodle Productions a couple of years prior, just as basically a resume for me, representation of my work and a portfolio type of thing. And I did some freelance consulting, so I thought it was a good idea to have a website. So I just decided I would make that my job until I found another job. And I was very fortunate to get a lot of consulting work right as I was transitioning out of the Level 5 job. And then I just continued on with it. And so I've been able to maintain a client base and just work under my own banner. And that's it. There was no grand scheme behind it. It was just me being entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial under duress.
Did it happen because of the pandemic? Is that why they closed their offices? Or
no, in fact, this was before the pandemic. So that was the end of 2019. We actually found out in the summer or early fall of 2019 that this would happen. And so so the pandemic, that was the beginning of 2020. I imagine that the pandemic would have affected things too, but not this.
Have you ever watched the movie Tears of the Sun before?
Yes, I hadn't watched it until you suggested it, and it was completely new to me, and I watched it last week. That was part of my Christmas movie viewing. Yeah, so thank you for introducing me to something new.
You're welcome. I feel like a lot of war films don't really capture the whole authentic view of war like this film did, so I thought it was interesting. Or I imagine it was more authentic. It felt more authentic, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not very well versed in war in general or the military, right. And also war films. I have to say that's not one of my go-to genres, but it did seem as if they were really experiencing a physical conflict. It appeared very realistic. The setting looked authentic. Do you know if it was shot in Nigeria or?
It was actually shot in Hawaii.
Oh,
because they couldn't afford to have the whole team in Africa. So, but they flew. A lot of the extras actually are from Africa. They flew them to Hawaii so they could be part of the movie.
I see. So all of that anguish and pain was really great acting because they were in a beautiful location.
Well, from the extras, a lot of the extras actually, from what I read, actually experienced something like that. In the movie, there's a old guy that's crying, and
Yes.
it wasn't acting; he was actually crying because he had a similar childhood of what was going on.
Looking down at a village that is burning and hearing gunfire is beyond movie making for a lot of us. It just triggers stuff.
There's an older gentleman, his character's name is Alpha. He lost all of his family, and he lost them in a way that is very much emulated in this story. Just hearing the gunshots and coming into the village, he just started weeping. He couldn't help himself.
Just these guys watching what we were doing just shook them up so much because it was so much like their own story. That in turn moved us, and everybody just bonded in a way that I've never really seen happen in a film.
Wow. You know, I think
crazy.
some of the best acting in the movie did come from the extras, the group of people migrating from the camp or the mission, and
Right.
that core group of people, they were magnificent. And so I guess having that real life experience made all the difference in the world.
Yeah. It's interesting how like there was a very passionate project that Bruce Willis was wanting to happen for quite some time.
That I didn't know. I looked for his name in the credits. I went to IMDb afterwards and I did some Googling, and I didn't see his name as a producer, but maybe he was a producer more behind the scenes, an uncredited producer, in other words. Is that the
Maybe.
case?
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure, but here I can check real quick, but I'm not sure. But I know that he had someone in mind that he wanted to write it and direct it. It was something he was wanting to do for a while, and they were originally going to make it a Die Hard film, and he said that he was going to walk out if they were going to do a Die Hard film because he felt like if it was Die Hard, it wouldn't be taken as seriously.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. And I'm glad you told me that, because that puts it in a whole new perspective of me. I have to be honest with you, Terry. I have listened to 2 podcasts lately about Bruce Willis, and truth be told, they are not flattering portraits of him at all. So I was very skeptical watching this movie. I wanted to not like him. I was looking for faults in his performance, and I was thinking like, oh, he couldn't have been behind the scenes on this movie, because in these 2 podcasts, which I loved, I'll give them a mention because I thought they were well done. One is called Haleywood, and it's all about Bruce Willis's family moving to Haley, Idaho, and so they lived there for a number of years, and he renovated the whole town, and that had mixed results, mixed reactions from the locals and so forth. And then the other podcast I listened to is called The Devil's Candy. Well, it's the Plot Thickens, which is a Turner Classic Movies podcast. And so this particular season was called The Devil's Candy, and it was about the making of Bonfire of the Vanities. And so Bruce Willis is very much painted as the behind the scenes villain of that movie, because it's all told from the perspective of a journalist, of a female journalist who was lucky enough to be chosen to cover the movie behind the scenes. And so she was there for all the filming. And I guess Bruce Willis was less than kind to her through the shooting and then beyond, after she wrote about it in a book and so forth. And anyway, so in both of these podcasts, Bruce Willis, it's not the most flattering picture of him. So I was thinking like, oh, okay, and anything that he does in this movie is just, he's trying to rehabilitate his image or whatever. I don't, although back then it was 2003 that Tears of the Sun was filmed, right? Or
Right.
the early 2000s. So that was probably the top of his career. And I don't know if people had a negative opinion of him back then. But anyway, I was cynical, but I liked hearing what you said. I liked hearing his involvement in this movie because it did do a lot of good for this incident in history, shedding light on it. It was a conflict that I didn't know a lot about. But I also read that the story was based on a conflict that happened in South America. Have you read that too?
I think that was one of the notes I took when I watched like bonus. I can't remember, but I think so.
Yeah, that's what I read, that it was actually a story that was documented by someone who was personally involved in this conflict in South America, and then it was adapted to fit the conflict in Nigeria, like the basic conflict and the kind of on the road story in the middle of all this chaos was fit for a different location and a different conflict.
But the thing about Bruce Willis or really any like big name celebrity, unless you know them personally, it's hard to really know what they're really like, because I feel like anytime somebody's under that much surveillance, there's always going to be good and bad because everybody makes mistakes.
That's true. That's true. And I've never been a celebrity, so I don't know what that kind of pressure is like. I wish I knew. That's the kind of experience that I really wish I had. So instead, I like to I will admit it. I do like to read about celebrity going off the rails stories.
Well,
So
it was. I mean, I get that. I mean, we're all human, but with everything that happened with Alec Baldwin, I'm not saying that he's a good or bad person, but like I would not want to ever be a celebrity just with everything going on with him.
wow, that's true. And gosh, when you think about it, that's a good point, because when you think about Rust and Alec Baldwin and all the stuff that happened on that set, can you imagine the chances of something like that happening on Tears of the Sun? Because how many more guns and explosives were in that movie? It's a miracle nobody got hurt on that
Well,
set.
actually, a stuntman died during the making of this film.
What? Oh my God! What happened?
I can't remember how they died, but let's see if I can find it real quick.
Wow! Oh my goodness! I would be really interested in that story to find out the circumstances and also compare it with Rust. But yes, I guess it's not surprising given the number of guns, the number of people, even if they were shooting in Hawaii, which is lovely, still you could see a lot of those locations they were remote. They weren't near hospitals, it looked like, or oh wow.
It's crazy.
Yes, it's so crazy. Oh, and thank goodness for the internet, so we can look this up in real time. This is a very important issue that deserves some attention. Wow, this is fascinating.
But I mean, like, anytime you're making a movie, there's always like different dangers. So
Yeah,
it's sad.
yeah,
But
there is. I'm thinking back to different sets that I've been on, and snafus. I actually I can't think of any major incidents related to things that there are a couple of sort of related things. When I was working on the Sonic 25th birthday party, we threw a big to-do during Comic-Con in San Diego. We threw a big party for Sonic at the House of Blues, and we filmed a live stream, a 4-hour live stream, and there were things that went wrong ahead of time and in real time. I mean, a 4-hour extravaganza live is, you're just asking for trouble to be filming all that time with no interruption. And but beforehand, we had an incident with some fans, and it was threatening to be a conflict at the event. So we had to take measures to stave that off. And so that was a bit disconcerting, especially because I was working in the front of the venue, as we didn't really have adequate security. So I was concerned because I am no threat for any. I am no deterrent. I pretty much I'm just just like a lump of humanity that is useless in a crisis. And then I'm thinking back to, let's see, other stuff that might have been one of the highlights of with some kind of a danger on set for me. But I haven't been involved in a lot of productions with guns. My specialty is kids and family entertainment. So I guess I dodged that bullet. No pun intended.
Yeah. Well, during that thing at the Comic-Con, were you like afraid something was going to happen to you?
Oh yes, I absolutely was, because we did not have adequate security. We were doing everything on a budget, and the budget did not allow. We had some security, but not the level that I thought we should have had, especially with me kind of being in charge at the one of the entry points, and also I don't know how familiar you are with the Sonic fan base, but they are very passionate. Talk about passion. I would say that's one of the more passionate fan bases out there, and
More
it's certainly
passionate than anime?
Well, it's kind of it's very comparable to that, because Sega being coming from a Japanese company, or actually Sega is a mashup of an American company with a Japanese company. If you go to the way beginning of the origins of the company 60 plus years ago, but now the headquarters is in Japan. It's perceived as a Japanese company, so a lot of its intellectual properties are considered Japanese or anime. So there is a bit of that in the mix with the Sonic fan base. But then also, if you add in the longevity of the franchise, it's been around for 30 plus years. So the momentum of the fan base has increased over the years. And now there's also the nostalgia factor. So people who were babies or young kids playing Sonic in the 90s, now a lot of them have kids and they've passed it on to their kids. And so that strengthens the passion, I think, kind of like what's happened with Star Wars over the years.
Right.
I imagine Star Wars is one of the more passionate fan bases too. But Sonic, I'm up close and personal with Sonic because I worked on Sonic almost exclusively for the time that I was at Sega, and I sat next to our head of social media for a year. literally sat, like he was here and I was there. I mean, not here in my place, but in the office, we sat right next to each other. And Aaron was just a genius in dealing with the fans, but I saw it firsthand. I saw what he went through every day, and it was just amazing. There was a lot. So that's why I feel pretty confident in saying that the Sonic fan base has a particular brand of passion, and that 25th birthday party was very special to a lot of people. So it did have the potential to get out of hand if people felt slighted or, upset about something that was going on, whether it was at the party or behind the scenes.
Have you ever had someone like forcefully hug you or anything like that, or any like fans coming at you? Since you said they're passionate.
Well, not real. I don't think the passion is for me, Terry. But God bless you for thinking that I would have that as a problem in my life. My problem is that I don't have enough hugs. I'm desperately crying for attention. Hence my appearance on your show here. But yes, I do have a number of fans from the Sega days who still contact me quite regularly, asking me for scoop on, hey, what's going on with the franchise, and if I have any secrets that I can reveal or anything like that. And I love hearing from people. It's really nice, but I am the last person to find out stuff now because I don't work for the company anymore. I do have a number of friends who still do, but even when I worked there, even the stuff that I was privy to, we were all under non-disclosure agreements, which is fairly typical. I would think in most companies nowadays, if you're employed somewhere full time, you sign an employment agreement which has a non-disclosure clause or page built into it. So you're promising not to reveal trade secrets or anything without permission. And so I really had to be very careful. One time I did get in a little bit of trouble, which, I mean, it was minor, but one of the Sonic fan forums found I was on a panel at a conference where I was saying, it was before the 25th anniversary celebration for Sonic. And on the panel, I was saying, oh, we're considering a lot of different things leading up to Sonic's birthday, a lot of different special events. And that was before we had confirmed the House of Blues in San Diego during Comic-Con. And so I said something like, we've gone to different potential partners, and we talked to somebody at YouTube Space LA and this place and that place or whatever. But for some reason, the Sonic Stadium, those were the folks who actually, they were like the only people who watched this live stream of this panel, this obscure panel. And they picked up on it and then ran with it on Sonic Stadium, like, oh, there might be a Sonic event at the YouTube Space LA, and then the news went through the fandom, and then I got a slap on the wrist, so to speak, from the powers that be, and it was something it never did happen. It was only in the talking stages, so I thought, oh, there's no harm in saying that we're considering different things, because we were, but I don't know. That was just one example. So when you're an employee of one of these big companies, especially, you have to be super careful about revealing too much.
I can't imagine how much trouble Tom Holland must get in, because I feel like he's not good at keeping secrets.
Oh, really? I don't follow him. I don't. I mean, I of course know who he is and all of that, but I haven't kept up with any gossip about him. What has he gotten in trouble for?
Well, in the past, I was watching these old TikTok videos of in the past him always accidentally spilling the beans of something major before it happened.
Oh, oh,
Like
oh.
he accidentally revealed that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were going to be in the upcoming Spider-Man movie, and then he spent a lot of time after that trying to convince people that they're not, and they are.
Oops.
And there's other things I can't remember that he accidentally spilled the beans to. And there's this one TikTok video where he's reading his script to people on live TikTok, and on the back of the script it says "Do not read," but he doesn't see that part, and he's reading it, and then he turns around, sees that, and just logs off immediately.
Oh no. Wow. But you know what? We won't feel too sorry for him because he's a big star, and it's
That's
not
true.
likely that he's going to get fired from Spider-Man for a spoiler. If
Right.
anything, he'll probably he would probably be an example of failing up for like generating unprecedented publicity for the movie because of his oops moment. That's what I'm thinking. Like, you know,
Probably,
somebody
maybe.
like me, if I make a mistake, that's my job, or it very likely could be. But for a star, I don't know, maybe he got a call from his agent or his lawyer who talked to somebody at Sony or whatever who said, don't do that anymore. But I can't imagine that he would have any like major repercussions, and they're not going to sue him for something like that. I don't think. I would be shocked if that were the case, because he's that whole franchise now. The whole thing is riding on his shoulders.
With the movie Tears of the Sun, we were talking about it being a project that was important, and you, with your Passion Poodle Productions or Pink Poodle Productions, are there any projects that you're working on that you're really excited about or important to you?
Yeah. So I have a full-time job actually working for Rainshine Entertainment. I'm the head of IP strategy and acquisitions for this company, Rainshine, which is a major force in India and aspiring to be a global entertainment powerhouse, and the company's well on its way. But we have a project that we're doing called Young Captain Nemo, and it's based on a book trilogy by a fantastic author named Jason Henderson. And we were able to hire Jeffrey Reddick, who is the creator of the Final Destination franchise, and he's also a very accomplished animation writer. He has a show on Netflix right now called A Tale Dark and Grim, and another one coming out very soon called Samurai Rabbit, the Usagi Yojimbo Chronicle, the Usagi Chronicles. And so anyway, Jeffrey adapted the books into a screenplay, and we are on very close to starting production on this animated movie trilogy. So that is a project that I'm working on very closely, and it's quite exciting. I was the one who brought the books into the company and pushed for them to be acquired as something for adaptation into the screen adaptation. And I know the author Jason Henderson very well, and then Jeffrey Reddick is a friend of mine, and we've wanted to work together for a long time and weren't able to for a variety of reasons, and now we are. So that's something that I'm very excited about, and hopefully we'll see a lot of progress this year.
Well, hopefully, maybe whenever you guys get it worked on and wrapped up, we could review it together on the show or something. That'd be
Oh,
fun.
sure. I must warn you that animation it's intended for an animated feature film, and animation takes a long time. So It might be a few years from now before we actually have anything to talk about, but but sure,
Still,
by that
that'll be
time,
exciting. Yeah.
by that time you might have forgotten about me because you've got your own late night talk show, or you might be way too big for my projects by then. But we'll see. Yeah, I mean, hopefully talking about it will speed things up and make give it a push in the right direction. But it is going well at this point. I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll continue on that trajectory, and we'll see. We'll
That's
see.
awesome. Real quick, actually, I'm wanting to try to make my own films, real low budget.
Yeah.
But I just thought it'd be like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you had any apps or anything to recommend for like using the scout locations.
Oh, scouting locations. No. No, I don't, because I work a lot in animation. So location scouting, that's one thing that's taken out of the mix when you do
Right.
animation, unless you're using a location for reference. However, I have made my own short films, and um, as a filmmaker, I am more of the school, the fly by the seat of your pants school. So I will make a location of wherever I am and whatever is easy and convenient. So so location scouting has not really been a part of the Marlene aesthetic up until this point. But no, I didn't even know there were apps for location scouting, but it makes sense. It makes sense that there would be. But I'm a very low tech, low budget kind of person. When I'm doing stuff on my own,
Right.
I like to use iMovie, and my dog, she's here. She's always a willing participant. She just now took a flying leap off of my lap in an effort to get in this conversation. She wants to be noticed. So yeah, but have you tested any of these location scouting apps, or
The ones I have tried, it's just New York and California and
okay.
Chicago. So I'm wanting to try to do something more local, not as busy or big. So, but
I bet you the film commissions in various places would have resources that you could use, free resources, because that's their business, is promoting the areas where they that they represent. And I have been to Location Expo at least once. It was in Santa Monica a few years ago. Maybe that's where it is all the time. I don't know why I went in this one particular year. I think maybe it was like 2017, 2018. But that is a wonderful resource if you're able to go or even participate online, because there are film commissions from all over the world there. And boy, you stop at one booth and they're throwing incentives at you right and left. And then also American Film Market, AFM. There are a lot of film commissions from all over the world that exhibit there and participate. And so you can get to know different areas, especially different states. I met a lot of different state film commissions there, and lots of resources, lots of tax incentives, and those types of things are changing all the time, it seems, with new administrations coming in and out. So yeah, so there, I'm sure there's a lot of research to be done if you are thinking of shooting, location shooting.
yeah. All right. What did you think of, back to the movie? What did you think of Lieutenant Waters in the movie, the character of Bruce Willis? Like, just his character. Like, what did you think of him?
Well, he was very stoic, and his performance was very minimalist. He kind of had one expression and one. He would deviate from that very seldomly. When he was talking to Dr. Kendricks, you could see him softening or a crack in that veneer, so to speak. And then at the end, of course, when he was injured. But throughout the movie, it seems as if Bruce Willis was trying to maintain what I imagine the military would teach a soldier, is to not invest yourself too personally in what you're doing, or not to show emotion even if you're feeling it, or to kind of stuff it down deep and don't don't think about it. So in that regard, I think it was an effective performance. It was kind of like he was the foil for all the emotion and angst that was going on with Dr. Kendricks, because she was quite reactive in all the situations. And then the native, the indigenous people, they were very, there was so much going on with them being displaced from their homes and separated from family members, and then death and destruction and all that. And they were magnificent. So I thought Bruce Willis was a good foil for them. He let others shine in that movie, even though it was clearly the movie was told from his perspective. It wasn't like his performance was taking away from, yes, wasn't overshadowing the really dramatic stuff, the other stuff that was going on. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I felt like, I don't know if I'd say his character was like no emotion, like what you were talking about. I felt like the movie kind of balanced well of him trying to fight right versus wrong. And the only reason I'd say that is because I work with somebody at a restaurant that's in the military. My brother's in the military. One of my ex brother-in-laws, I guess, was in the military for quite a while. And so, I mean, my knowledge of it's still very small, but like, I know when my brother came back from being in the Marines, he completely changed, and he had to get used to civilian because things are a lot different.
Right.
And
Right.
I feel like if you're in the military long enough, your perception of right and wrong gets kind of blurry because you, in certain circumstances, that you don't really know what to do.
Yes. Yes. I'm sure to say it's confusing is an understatement.
Right.
It's you're dealing with external conflict, but the internal conflict must be unbearable. And yeah, and you would know more about it than I would, because I don't have any family members. Well, my uncle was in the military, but he didn't serve overseas. So that's, I don't think there's any way you can compare experiences to somebody who's seen combat in versus somebody who has not. So yeah, so it sounds like, now what have your family members seen this movie, and do they have an opinion on the performances and the portrayal?
I have not asked them if they've seen it. I asked a coworker if he's seen it who serves in the military, and he said no. But this film kind of opened my eyes in a lot of ways about like the military life, because there was this movie my brother, who was a Marine, recommended me to watch, called Range 15, and I watched it. It's a very weird, low budget movie, but it's made by all these military vets, and the movie is very, very, to me, distasteful and really, really weird, and a lot of really weird humor and almost offensive, I guess. But
Oh
after
no.
watching this movie, though, I felt like that weird movie was weird to me because I couldn't understand it because it was made for military, not for civilian people, and
Okay.
the movie would make fun of like having to kill kids trying to make it comical, but maybe the reason it was doing that was for people who actually did have to do that, try to look at an alternative way of having to live on from doing that. And so it kind of gave me a new appreciation, I guess, of the military and what they have to go through.
Yes. Wow. I I've never even considered how a veteran would perceive their portrayal. It's probably similar to different other underserved communities where they feel like people who aren't from their background, and then they make films or entertainment based on their experience, and it's not authentic, and it's not like they might look at a movie like Tears of the Sun and find the fault in that because the majority of the people behind the scenes, the producers and whatnot, are not veterans. They've not had the same experience. But then if they make their own authentic portrayal of, or if they're making content for their own community, it probably really resonates with them, but it might not have get the same reaction from civilians.
Right. For sure.
So, gosh, and it's hard to say if there's a right way or a wrong way. I guess since it's art, maybe there isn't a right or a wrong. It's just you just have to. I guess if you're an artist, you have to just try to stay true to what you believe. Stay true to your truth, what
Right.
you believe really happened. And try to offend as few people as possible in doing that.
Right, for sure. And a little bit I do know about the military. I know that like you're I don't want to say the word brainwashed, but like you're trained in a way where you have to obey orders and you're going to obey them regardless. Like you're trained to think that way. And so it was
Yeah.
kind of interesting to see the Lieutenant Waters try to figure out if he should obey orders or go against orders. Because I mean
Right.
that
I would
that's
think that he would have been court-martialed for his behavior. I mean, it all, of course, turned out okay,
right.
but I could see him getting into trouble later on. It almost reminded me, in a way, of that movie Sully. Did you see that about the?
I have not. I wanted to. I haven't watched it yet.
So it's not an exact comparison by any stretch, because Sully was not flying a military plane or anything like that, but he made some decisions that weren't considered protocol, I guess, for commercial airline pilots. And there was a moment after the incident happened where he was hailed as a hero in the press and with the public, but meanwhile back at headquarters he was getting in a heap of trouble. I mean, for it seemed like a long time, the way they portrayed it in the movie. He was under investigation by the FAA and it seemed, of course, watching the movie, it seems so obvious that he's a hero, and like why is anyone harassing this poor man? But I guess if you're an insider, if you're part of that profession, if you're part of the airline industry, there are certain protocols that should be followed and whatnot. And so if I was thinking like, oh, if Sully got into a lot of trouble for doing what seems like something so obviously heroic, then imagine this gentleman Waters, because he took the lives of all these civilians into his care, and he wasn't supposed to do that, and then he put his own men's lives at risk, and some of them died, and maybe they wouldn't have died if he hadn't have taken on that extra responsibility. So I don't know. Do you think he would have got, like, if there was a sequel to this movie, do you think he would have gotten in trouble with the military?
I mean, realistically, I think so,
Yeah.
but movie-wise, no.
No.
A movie.
Has a classic Hollywood ending.
But it's just interesting, like from like military perspective. Another movie I was kind of thinking about and comparing it to is the American Sniper with
Oh, yeah.
Chris Kyle, which I read his book several times, and it's interesting how like when his whole life was the military, and so whenever he came back home, he kind of felt like a loss of identity, and he was trying to figure out what the right thing to do was, because he wanted his country to still be number one, and that's what got him killed. And yeah.
Yes. What did you think of that? The movie? Did you see that one with Bradley Cooper?
Yeah, it's been a while, but Clint Eastwood's usually a pretty good director.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I enjoyed the movie too. I thought it was it was interesting, and it was very emotional.
For sure. Back to the Tears of the Sun, did you think it was written pretty well for the kind of movie it was?
Well, again, I don't have a lot of experience watching war movies, and I like true crime. I love true crime documentaries, but then to see fictional portrayal of true events is not as appealing to me.
Right.
But anyway, I feel like this movie, it did have some good things going for it, but the script was not my favorite. The script, for a few reasons. One, I thought the dialogue had a lot of cliche in it, and I don't think that there was enough distinction between the American soldiers to be able to tell the difference. They all there was a lot of similarities, and it was hard to keep track of who was red, who was whatever. They had those nicknames or whatever, and I can't even remember them all, but they all seemed like one composite character to me. And then I was disappointed in the portrayal of Dr. Kendricks. I thought she was very much a stereotypical Hollywood leading lady, even though she was a doctor. She was very glamorous and damsel in distress, and so I could see in the writing that somebody was trying to make a feeble attempt at breaking stereotypes, but not really. I do think it kind of fell into that white savior complex trope a lot, where, especially at the end, where the character of Patience was crying, and she was just like so effusive in her praise of Bruce Willis, and I love you and I'll never forget you and all that. And I was like, ugh. I mean, I don't know. I thought it diminished the good things from the movie. And then there were there was a certain repetitiveness in the plot. It was, they go on the road, there'd be somebody, the bad guys would find out where they are, there'd be some kind of skirmish, and then they'd move on, and then it would happen again. So that the ending like that was the big finish, of course. That was probably the most exchange of gunfire, but it was sort of anticlimactic because it had already happened like 5 times prior in the movie. So I found it was an interesting movie, and I'm glad I watched it, but it wasn't a perfect movie in my
Right.
opinion. There were some nitpicky details that maybe a lot of other people didn't mind or didn't notice, but also it's very hard for me to watch movies and TV series for pure entertainment anymore. Like I said, like my entertainment is watching a grisly true crime documentary, because I feel like that's such a departure from what I do in real life, making up stories and also trying to sugarcoat stuff for kids and family audiences. And like, I feel like everything is so censored and sanitized that what in my day-to-day work, that I want to see like the real stuff. I want to see like the all the warts and all. And so like that's why I love true crime podcasts, true crime documentaries, or stuff about like scandals. And because then I kind of feel like I'm also being naughty, like watching this stuff, because I know it wouldn't. I'm not. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing during work. So then, if that's my free time, it's like, hoo, I'm getting away with something. But yeah. So I guess that's a long answer to your question.
What you mean by the white savior trope? Like, I don't think I've heard of that before. That was just.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, the white savior trope is white people coming in and saving ethnic minorities. So that was kind of a thing in Hollywood up until the recent woke era that we're in right now. And so it's kind of like, it's just that. So if you look back through Hollywood history and also research, like I think American Film Institute, USC has done a lot of research in partnership with Gina Davis's foundation on gender portrayals in film and television. And I think mixed in with some of that research, there has been studies on ethnic portrayals. So while this this is the perspective of the white guys who came into Nigeria, and that might have really happened, but it still falls into that that they needed saving, and like maybe a more well-rounded perspective would have been like the character of the Akira, the king, Akura, the one whose father was king and then he was murdered, like to follow his story and to show how he was a hero in that for his people, that would be, I mean, or to balance out what Bruce Willis's character was doing with what an indigenous person was going through, instead of having it be all from the perspective of the white guys, because you have to admit it was a very pro-America movie. It was, right. I have done a lot of world traveling, and that has opened my eyes to the perception of America in other places. And some of the scenes that I saw, it made me think like, oh, this is why some people hate Americans. It's just, there was some like arrogance, but it's interesting to me because the director of this movie, Antoine Fuqua,
directed Trinity.
Yes, and he is African American. He's very
That's
famous.
why I was confused at
accomplished.
first. Like,
I know. So that confused me too, because I was like, gee, it seems like not. It seems like a white guy was behind the telling of this movie, but it could have been, like this was not like a small independent movie where I would think Antoine Fuqua would have as much control as Bruce Willis. And like Antoine Fuqua, you cannot argue with his talent, his accomplishments and everything. But in 2003, Antoine Fuqua and 2003 Bruce Willis, I think if there was ever any disagreement, Bruce Willis would win. And Bruce Willis also representing the team of Bruce Willis, like Bruce Willis's agents, Bruce Willis's handlers, and maybe Bruce Willis picked the cinematographer or whatever. And so I think my guess is that Antoine Fuqua's vision might have been compromised a bit. I'd be interested to see any like archival interviews with him, although he probably couldn't say a whole lot. And certainly he wasn't going to disparage Bruce Willis if he ever wanted to work in Hollywood again, especially at that time. But that's what, that struck me too, because there seemed to be like a discrepancy there.
so it would been kind of more interesting to see it more from the kid's perspective and the king or president's family.
Maybe, yeah, or maybe a more authentic portrayal. But
Right.
then again, show business is a business. And in 2003, what's going to bring more people to the theater? Seeing Bruce Willis save a whole bunch of people, or somebody who nobody's ever heard of, like if it was a character that maybe Denzel Washington could have played, maybe that would have packed theaters. But Denzel Washington, he was in Training Day. He wasn't in this movie. He didn't play the king. So it wasn't his story. And the actor who played the king was amazing. He was, and I looked him up on IMDb, and he's had a really successful career. Not above the title billing like Bruce Willis, but he has worked consistently since then and has had important parts in a lot of movies. So nothing can take away from his talent, but down the line there were business decisions made. And Bruce Willis of 2003, I mean, that was right around the time of The Sixth Sense, which I think was one of his, besides Die Hard, The Sixth Sense, that was one of his crowning achievements. So
I like Sixth Sense a lot. That's one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that is a wonderful, wonderful movie. Probably one of my favorites, definitely of Bruce Willis's performances. But then this movie, I don't think did huge business at the box office. From what I read online, it seems to. I don't think that the box office grosses matched even the production budget. So there was money lost for sure, because there was marketing involved, and that was a big, huge expense for somebody. And all of Bruce Willis's perks, I guess that went into the budget, but he was a considerable force back then, so he got top dollar.
I thought it was interesting everything you were saying about from the white perspective and all that stuff, because I can't remember how to say his name, but the director in an interview said that all he really wanted to do with this film is paint the idea of humanity helping humanity. And so, like, if that was his goal and that's all he cared about of the entire film, do you think that he failed at that if it was only showing one side, or do you think he achieved that?
I think that what we see as the movie was not a singular vision. It was, I hope, at least 50% of what Antoine Fuqua intended, but just knowing how the business works from behind the scenes and all the decisions and all the stakeholders who have to weigh in on a project. It's staggering how many people have a say in what, and from so many different perspectives. And I understand it. I'm not saying that one is right and one is wrong, because without all these stakeholders, there wouldn't be all the jobs that there are in the business. And I'm very grateful to be working in the business. So, but from what I have observed, it's often a case of too many cooks spoil the broth kind of thing. And there was, with a marquee name like Bruce Willis, that's a whole other kettle of fish. I have not even ever, well, I take that back. I worked with Paul McCartney for 2 years. So I guess Paul McCartney is the Bruce Willis of the music world. But, and that experience also was eye-opening in just how you have to tiptoe around a name like that and their whole machine. But I imagine that Antoine Fuqua, I wouldn't say that he failed, or I would say, look, every movie that gets out there, and my dog feels passionate about this too. Every movie that gets made is a miracle. It is a miracle that anything gets made, given the amount of money and the turnover in the business, the changing tastes of the audience, technology, like there's so pandemics, all kinds of things, people's dogs interrupting calls, all kinds of things happen. It is a miracle that anything ever gets made. And then when you add all the extenuating circumstances of this particular film, like being, I mean, a stunt person got killed on the set. That is like, that right there could have derailed the whole production. So the fact that the movie was even completed and saw the light of day, that's tremendous. So I would say he succeeded, no matter what Marlene Sharp thinks of it. It's easy for me to sit back and, well, I would have done this, I would have done that, or, you know, what do they call it? Monday morning quarterbacking and so forth. I think he succeeded. Would I have maybe offered other opinions or made different choices? Perhaps, but I don't know what all went on behind closed doors. So yeah, I say he succeeded. He got it done, and it looks great. And hey, look at you. It's a movie that affected you deeply, and you have a personal connection to the military. So I would think that you are a better judge of authenticity, certainly better than I am. And if it touches people, then that's a success.
Well, I really appreciate having you on. And what is one of your favorite movies of all time?
Oh, wow. Well, I really love Clueless. That is one of my, and I used to have two favorite movies, Clueless and Annie Hall. Those were my two favorites. Now it's just Clueless, because I cannot ignore the Woody Allen controversy that has gone on in the past few years. It's hard for me to separate the art from the artist. Some people can do it. I'm not one of those people. But I still love Annie Hall and think it's an amazing movie. But that has caused Clueless has pulled ahead a little bit because of that. But yeah, those are my two favorites.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. This has been an absolute pleasure. I feel like I learned so much from this exercise. It was almost like taking a little class, an extension class, a film school extension class in theory or something like that. And so thank you. And for for the audience out there, please visit my website, www.pinkpoodleproductions.com. You'll see more of Blanche Dubois Sharp, my furry child who has made herself known. She's also the chair dog of the board for Pink Poodle Productions. So she's all over the branding. And yeah, just thank you and enjoy the movies, because every movie is a gift and a miracle.
Oh, I remember there was one more thing I was wanting to ask you before you go.
Oh, yes, sure.
So I agree, like with everything that it takes to make a movie, it is a lot of work, but it surprises me almost how many like B-rated or terrible movies are made, because I mean, I haven't really made a movie yet, but with all the hard work it takes, like it just seems like, why would you want to make such a bad movie unless you're just so clueless and oblivious that it's bad?
I think you nailed it. I think I would venture to say that most filmmakers do not intend to make a bad movie, but circumstances happen. I mean, what is the cliche? Shit happens. And certainly if it can happen in a big budget studio picture, then it certainly can happen in a low budget indie picture too. And human beings are imperfect, so of course they're going to be making bad movies, whether they want to or not. I don't think most people want to lose money on making a movie, although maybe some people will make something as more of a vanity project to satisfy their own ego more than anything else. But how many people can admit that? Even the most vanity focused project probably started out as somebody thinking that they're going to do good for the world or art in general by making this whatever their idea, conceptualization of their idea is. So yeah, I'm not really surprised. And people have different tastes too. Even within a lifetime, people will have. I say that because it's happened to me. Up until like 3 years ago, I could only, as a consumer for my own entertainment, I could only really watch sitcoms and like old sitcoms on TV Land. That because I felt like that was different enough from my day-to-day experience that I could enjoy it as entertainment. And also, I didn't want to be reminded of bad stuff in the world. It was just where I was in my head. That's what I could tolerate. And then, I don't know, like 3 years ago, maybe it's hormones or the pandemic or the aspects of the moon. I don't know, but something in me just snapped, and I just can't watch TV Land anymore. I'm just really all about true crime documentaries and podcasts, and I do have a bit of an obsessive personality, so when I like something, I really go for it, and then if I hate something, it's the opposite. So it could just be me, but I'm sure there's at least one other person in the world who's had wildly changing tastes like myself. So what appealed to me 4 years ago is not the same as what appeals to me now, and I imagine that happens to others too, to differing degrees. And yeah, so and there is an expression that I love because I love shopping at thrift stores and antique stores, and it's one person's trash is another person's treasure. And I think that is true in the world of entertainment for sure, because I know a lot of stuff that I have considered trash is a top grossing, record holding movie or TV show, and vice versa. So
That's fair.
what are you going to do? Them's the breaks.
Since you listen to a lot of true crime, I'm curious, like how realistic, how much stand up is Law and Order? compared to true crime. Since you listen to so much true crime, you probably could point out all the cliches in Law and Order.
Well, I don't watch Law and Order all that much, so
Okay.
I'm not a Law and Order authority. I've watched it, but not recently and not consistently. But true crime podcasts, it's debatable how much of it is true in quotation marks and how much is amped up for entertainment value. I mean, and it's not like every true crime podcast I think is great. Some of them I find I can't listen to for if it's too I don't know. Like I can't listen to anything else about Ted Bundy. I feel like I've just capped out on my Ted Bundy tolerance. I don't want to hear about him anymore. Plus his crimes were too it's just too much. But but I don't know. I mean I like stuff that has like a good mystery involved in it, like a whodunit. And so even if it's not, I say that I love grisly true crime, but really, I love mysterious true crime. And if you tell me it's true, I'll believe you. Like I won't question it. Maybe I'll Google it after I listen to it. But like if you tell me it's true, that's good enough for me. I love to think that something's based on a true story. That always jacks it up a few stars in my book. But yeah, I think Law and Order though is supposed to be based on real stories, so that's cool.
Yeah, some of the stuff in the Special Victims Unit seem like how could anybody do that? But people do weird stuff all the time.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yes, they do. Yes.
Well, I really enjoyed having you on, so thank you so much.
Likewise, and a big thank you to Podcast Guests, which is the website, the company that put us together. That's how I came to be on your show. So I love those guys. That's a great opportunity that they present for podcasters and people who like to be guests to find each other.
Yeah, I need to try to get on there again because I'm still don't have enough guests.
Oh wow! Well, I could refer you to some people. I have a few friends who would love to be on this podcast, so
Well,
I'll
thank
send you
so
an
much.
email.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.